You walk into a phone store and the salesperson looks you right in the eye and says, "This one has an OLED screen." And you nod, you smile, you pretend you know what that means. But here's the truth. Most of us have no idea what we just agreed to. OLED, LCD, Retina, AMOLED. It all sounds like alphabet soup. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what's happening inside your phone screen. And more importantly, you're going to know which one you actually want. No tricks, no jargon, just the truth. All right, think of your phone screen like a theater. A big, beautiful theater with thousands of tiny light bulbs. Each one of those light bulbs is a pixel. And every single thing you see on your screen, your photos, your videos, your texts, is just those little light bulbs turning on and off in different colors. That's it. That's all a screen is. A theater full of tiny lights putting on a show for you. Now, the difference between OLED and LCD is really just about how those light bulbs get their power. And once you understand that, everything else makes sense. Let's start with LCD, because that's the older technology. LCD stands for Liquid Crystal Display, but don't worry about that name. Here's what you need to know. Imagine your theater has one giant floodlight in the back. It's always on. It's shining light forward through the entire stage. And in front of that floodlight, you've got thousands of tiny shutters. Each shutter can open or close to let light through or block it. When the shutter opens, you see light. When it closes, you see black. That's how LCD works. There's a big backlight behind everything, and the screen just controls how much of that light gets through. It's simple, it's reliable, it's been around forever. But here's the thing. That backlight never turns off, even when you're looking at something dark, like a black background or a night scene in a movie. That floodlight is still glowing back there. The shutters are closed, sure, but light still leaks through a little bit. That's why LCD screens don't look perfectly black. They look more like dark gray. And that's also why LCD screens use more battery, because that backlight is always working, even when you don't need it. Now let's talk about OLED. OLED stands for Organic Light Emitting Diode, which sounds like something out of a science lab, but it's actually way simpler than LCD once you picture it. With OLED, there is no giant floodlight in the back. None. Instead, every single light bulb in the theater can turn itself on and off. Each pixel makes its own light. So if you're watching a movie with a black background, those pixels just turn off completely. No light, no glow. True black. That's why OLED screens look so stunning. The colors pop, the contrast is insane, and blacks actually look black. And because pixels only light up when they need to, OLED uses less power. If you're scrolling through a dark mode app, half the screen might be off and your battery thanks you for it. But, and this is important, if you're looking at a bright white page all day, OLED actually uses more power than LCD, because now every pixel is working hard. So it's not always better for battery. It depends on what you're doing. Now don't worry, this doesn't mean one is always better than the other. They both have strengths, they both have weaknesses. And here's where it gets interesting. LCD is cheaper to make, a lot cheaper. That's why budget phones and older models still use it. It's durable, it doesn't wear out as fast, and honestly, for most people doing normal stuff like texting, browsing, watching YouTube, LCD is totally fine. You're not missing out on much. But OLED has that wow factor. If you care about watching movies, editing photos, or you just want your screen to look incredible, OLED is the move. It's also thinner and lighter, because remember, there's no bulky backlight taking up space. That's why flagship phones almost all use OLED now. It's the premium option. But here's the catch. OLED screens can burn in. You know how if you leave a TV on the same channel for years, you start to see a ghost image of the logo? That's burn-in. And it can happen with OLED because those pixels are lighting themselves up. And over time, some of them get tired. If you leave the same image on your screen for hours every day, like a navigation bar or a game interface, you might start to see a faint outline of it even when it's gone. LCD doesn't have this problem because the backlight is separate from the pixels. It's just shining light. It doesn't care what's on screen. Now, is burn-in a deal breaker? Not really. Most people will never notice it. Phone makers have gotten really good at preventing it with software tricks. But it's something to know, especially if you're the kind of person who watches the same thing on repeat or uses your phone as a GPS for hours at a time. Let's talk about brightness for a second. LCD screens can get incredibly bright because remember, they've got that big floodlight behind them. Crank it up and you've got tons of light pushing through. That makes LCD better in direct sunlight sometimes. OLED can get bright too, especially newer ones, but because each pixel is doing its own thing, they have to be a little more careful about heat and power. So in a bright outdoor setting, a good LCD might actually be easier to see than a cheaper OLED. But a high-end OLED, that thing will blow your mind. It's all about the quality of the panel. Here's another thing most people don't think about: response time. That's how fast the screen can change from one image to another. OLED is faster, way faster, because each pixel just switches on or off instantly. LCD has to wait for those shutters to move and the liquid crystals to shift. It's not slow, but it's not instant. Gamers love OLED for this reason. Everything feels smoother, more responsive. If you play a lot of fast-paced games on your phone, you'll notice the difference. But let's zoom out for a second. You already use both of these technologies without realizing it. Your laptop might have LCD. Your TV might have OLED. Your smartwatch probably has OLED because it's small and needs to save battery. And your old phone from 5 years ago? Definitely LCD. None of this is new. It's just that now the terms are being thrown at you in a store and someone's trying to upsell you. So here's the real question. Which one should you actually buy? If you want the best-looking screen, the deepest blacks, the most vibrant colors, and you're willing to pay a little more, go OLED. If you want something reliable, bright in sunlight, longer lasting without worrying about burn-in, and you don't want to spend extra, go LCD. It's not a trick, it's just a choice. And now you know what you're choosing. Let me bring this all back to the theater. LCD is like having a big, dependable floodlight. It's always there, it's bright, it works. OLED is like having a million tiny candles, each one lighting up exactly when and where you need it. It's more dramatic, more precise, more beautiful, but it also requires a little more care. Both put on a great show, you just have to decide which kind of theater you want in your pocket. And here's the thing. Now that you know this, you're never going to look at a phone screen the same way again. You're going to walk into that store, and when someone says OLED, you're going to know they're talking about self-lighting pixels. When they say LCD, you're going to picture that backlight. You're not going to nod and pretend anymore. You're going to actually understand. And that's power. So, next time someone asks you what the difference is, you can explain it. Think of it like a theater. One has a floodlight, one has individual bulbs, and boom, you just made a complex topic simple. That's all this ever was. A bunch of tiny lights putting on a show, doing their best to make your apps look good. And now you know exactly how they do it.